In 1844, a physician in Paris documented the following case. A man collapsed in the street, clutching his chest, unable to breathe. He was carried to a hospital. He had not been struck. He had not exerted himself. He had no history of heart trouble. While the doctors examined him, a messenger arrived. The man's twin brother across the city had been crushed beneath the wheel of a carriage at the exact moment of the collapse. The injury was to the chest. The brother who fell in the street had felt it, not heard about it, not guessed it, felt it, in the same part of the body, at the same instant, across a distance that made sensory communication impossible. The physician recorded the case. He did not call it supernatural. He did not call it a miracle. He treated it with the clinical precision of a man documenting a phenomenon he could observe but could not explain. He was not the first to record such a case. He would not be the last. And the phenomenon he documented, a twin's body responding to an injury sustained by their other half at a distance, has been reported so consistently across so many centuries, in so many medical and philosophical texts, that its erasure from the scientific record in the 20th century requires more explanation than the phenomenon itself. The deeper I went into that erasure, the more I found something I wasn't expecting. Not proof that twin telepathy is real. Something stranger. Proof that the scientific establishment stopped asking whether it was real at the exact moment when the tools to test it became available. Start with what the old world knew, because the old world wasn't guessing, it was documenting. The ancient Greeks understood twins as sharing a single soul divided between two bodies. Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, described twins as arising from a single generative event that split into two expressions, an understanding that, while mechanistically wrong, captured something about the relationship that modern embryology has confirmed. Identical twins arise from a single fertilized egg that splits, typically within the first 2 weeks of development. They share 100% of their DNA. They shared a womb. They shared a blood supply. They were, for the first days of their existence, literally one organism that became two. Aristotle documented cases of what he called sympathia, shared feeling, between twins. The concept was not fringe. It was medical. It appeared in the Hippocratic corpus, in Roman medical texts, in the Arabian medical tradition that preserved and extended Greek knowledge across the medieval period. The idea that twins share a physical bond that transcends proximity was treated as an observable fact of nature, not as a belief requiring defense. In the medieval period, twin accounts multiplied. Medical texts from the 12th and 13th centuries describe twins who fell ill simultaneously despite being in different cities. The phenomenon was catalogued alongside other sympathy effects. The widely observed tendency for wounds to respond to treatment applied to the weapon that caused them, or for a mother to feel labor pains in sympathy with her daughter. These were understood as expressions of a connected physical world, a world in which bodies that shared origin maintained invisible bonds. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Century after century, across medical traditions that evolved independently, the same observation was recorded. Twins feel each other, not emotionally, physically, in the body, in the same limb, at the same moment, across distances that preclude any known mechanism of transmission. This raises a simple but critical question. When did a phenomenon documented for 2,000 years become something we weren't supposed to believe in? The answer has a date, and the date is revealing. In 1882, a group of scholars in London founded the Society for Psychical Research. Among them was Frederick W. H. Myers, a classicist and philosopher who coined the word that would define and doom the phenomenon in a single act of naming: telepathy. From the Greek tele, distant, and pathos, feeling, distant feeling. The word Myers created was precise, elegant, and lethal, because the moment the phenomenon had a name, the name could be categorized, and the category it was placed in, psychical research, parapsychology, The study of things that respectable science does not study ensured that the phenomenon would be dismissed before it was investigated. Myers himself documented several twin cases in his 1903 book, Human Personality and Its Survival of Bodily Death. He treated them as data. He described twins who reported feeling each other's pain, sharing thoughts at a distance, knowing without sensory information that something had happened to the other. His cases were detailed, sourced, cross-referenced. They were the first systematic attempt to collect and analyze the testimony that medical texts had been recording for centuries. And the scientific establishment responded not with investigation, but with a wall, because Myers had committed the unforgivable error. He had placed twin shared sensation in the same category as spirit communication, clairvoyance, and mediumship. The word telepathy, instead of opening a door to legitimate research, sealed it shut. The phenomenon was now classified as paranormal, and the paranormal, by institutional definition, was not real. As if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. The silence was deafening, because here's what was happening to twins while the scientific establishment was looking the other way. They kept feeling each other. They kept reporting it. They kept walking into doctors' offices and emergency rooms with injuries they hadn't sustained, pain in body parts that hadn't been touched, knowledge of events they couldn't have known about. And they were told, consistently, universally, by every authority they consulted, that what they were experiencing wasn't real, that it was coincidence, confirmation bias, emotional projection, anything but what it felt like from the inside, which was a sensation so specific, so localized, so precisely correlated with what was happening to their twin at that moment, that no amount of institutional dismissal could make it go away. In 2004, the Department of Twin Research and Genetic Epidemiology at King's College London conducted a survey of its twin register. Over 5,000 twins responded. Nearly 40% reported having the ability to know what was happening to their twin without being told. A further 15% described themselves as convinced of it. In a separate study, the French researcher Rosambo surveyed 600 twins and found that approximately 30% described what they called a community of sensations. In typical cases, one twin was injured, an accident, a burn, a blow, and the other felt sudden pain in the same part of the body. Some reported bruises, blisters, or marks appearing on their skin at the site corresponding to their twin's injury. Not all twins, not every time, but consistently enough, across enough individuals, in enough independent surveys, to constitute a body of testimony that in any other field of medicine would be considered sufficient grounds for serious investigation. The evidence suggests something much larger than coincidence, because here's what happens when you actually test it. Not dismiss it, test it. In controlled experiments conducted by researcher Guy Lyon Playfair and colleagues, twin pairs were separated into isolated rooms at opposite ends of a building. One twin, designated the sender, was exposed to surprise stimuli, a hand plunged into ice-cold water, a mild electric shock, a sudden loud noise from a bursting balloon, or a pile of china plates being dropped. The other twin, the receiver, was monitored using electrodermal activity sensors, polygraph-grade instruments that measure the skin's electrical conductance, a reliable indicator of autonomic nervous system arousal. In some pairs, the receiver showed measurable, immediate physiological responses at the exact moment the sender was surprised. Not in all pairs. In some, the responses were recorded on instruments. They were timed. They correlated precisely with the stimulus applied to the twin in the other room. 2 of these experiments have been published in peer-reviewed journals. The researcher noted that the clearest results consistently came from late-splitting identical twins, those whose single egg divided later in development, who spent more time as a single organism before becoming 2. I want to pause here and ask something that isn't usually asked. What does it feel like to be one organism that became 2? Because that's what identical twins are. They are not 2 people who happen to share DNA. They are one fertilized egg that, for reasons embryology still does not fully understand, split into two bodies. For somewhere between 1 and 14 days after conception, they were one. One set of cells, one developmental trajectory, one organism. And then something happened, a division, a separation. And from that point forward, two bodies developed in parallel, sharing a womb, sharing a blood supply, sharing every chemical and hormonal signal that passed through the placental environment. Sharing, for 9 months, a biological world so intimate that modern hospitals have found that twin newborns placed in the same bed show improved self-regulation, reduced crying, and decreased pain responses compared to twins separated at birth. The body remembers. Whatever the mechanism, the body of a twin carries the imprint of having been, for a period of its earliest existence, part of something else, part of someone else. And the question that the scientific establishment has spent a century avoiding is whether that imprint is permanent, whether the connection that existed when the twins were one organism persists after they become two, whether the shared sensation that twins report across distances, across decades, across entire lifetimes, is not a delusion but a residual function of a bond that was formed before the nervous system was developed enough to record it. The deeper I went, the more I found that the dismissal of twin shared sensation follows the exact same pattern as every other dismissal I've studied. A phenomenon observed across cultures for thousands of years, documented in medical texts across centuries, reported by hundreds of thousands of individuals in modern surveys, measured in controlled experiments by researchers using physiological monitoring equipment, and dismissed, not refuted, dismissed. The distinction matters. Refutation requires an alternative explanation that accounts for the data. Dismissal requires only the institutional authority to say it isn't real. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. The ancients said yawning transmitted something between bodies. Neuroscience found mirror neurons firing involuntarily. The ancients said mirrors were portals. Neuroscience found the strange face illusion. The ancients said twins shared sensation. Electrodermal monitoring found measurable physiological correlations between separated twins at the exact moment of stimulus. In every case, the ancient observation was dismissed as superstition. In every case, the modern evidence confirmed the observation while offering a different vocabulary for describing it. And in every case, the institutional response was to treat the confirmation as an anomaly rather than an answer. Now here's the thread that nobody wants to pull. Larry Dawsey, the physician and researcher, reviewed the accumulated evidence on twin shared sensation and concluded that despite the fact that exceptional experiences have been reported by hundreds of twins during many years, the significance of these experiences has largely been ignored, not disproven, ignored. The evidence exists, the surveys exist, the controlled experiments exist, the physiological recordings exist, and the scientific establishment has, with remarkable consistency, chosen not to follow the trail. This raises a simple but critical question. Why? Not why is twin telepathy controversial? Why is it unfunded? Why has no major research university established a dedicated program to study the phenomenon that 40% of twins on the King's College Register reported experiencing? Why has no neuroimaging study been conducted placing twins in paired fMRI scanners to observe in real time what happens in one twin's brain when the other is stimulated? The technology exists. The methodology exists. The subject pool exists. Hundreds of thousands of twins worldwide who report shared sensation. Everything needed to investigate the phenomenon properly is available. And the investigation has not been conducted. The official explanation collapses here, because we're told that the phenomenon hasn't been proven, that the evidence is anecdotal, that the controlled experiments have small sample sizes. All true. But the reason the sample sizes are small is that the research isn't funded. The reason the evidence remains largely anecdotal is that no institution has committed to systematic collection. The phenomenon hasn't been proven because no one with the resources to prove it has tried. And the question of why no one has tried is more revealing than any experimental result could be. Because consider what a confirmed mechanism for twin shared sensation would mean. It would mean that two human bodies, separated by distance, can transmit physiological information between them through no known channel. It would mean that the materialist model of the body, the model that says the body is a closed system, that sensation requires sensory input, that the nervous system operates within the boundaries of the skin, is incomplete. Not wrong. Incomplete. It would mean that there is a form of connection between human bodies that current physics cannot account for. And that confirmation, the confirmation that the body can do something that the model says it can't, is the one finding that institutional science is least equipped to absorb. I don't have a complete theory. I have a question that multiplies the deeper I look. Why was a phenomenon documented in medical texts for 2,000 years reclassified as paranormal in 1882 and never reclassified back? Why do 40% of twins in the largest twin study in the world report shared sensation? And why has that statistic not triggered a major research initiative? Why do controlled experiments show measurable physiological correlations between separated twins? And why have those experiments not been replicated at scale? Why did the old world treat twin shared sensation as an observable medical fact? And why does the modern world treat it as an embarrassment? I'll leave you with this. Somewhere right now, a twin is wincing, reaching for a part of their body that hasn't been touched, feeling something sharp or hot or heavy in a limb that is perfectly fine. And somewhere else, at that exact moment, their twin is hurt. The distance between them might be a mile. It might be a continent. And the sensation in the first twin's body is as specific, as localized, as physically real as if the injury were their own. They will tell someone. They will describe what they felt, and they will be told it isn't real, that it's coincidence, that their body didn't actually feel what it felt, that the 2,000-year record of physicians documenting exactly this experience is folklore, that the 40% of twins who report it are all mistaken, that the polygraph readings are artifacts, that the body is a closed system and nothing crosses the gap between one person and another without a physical mechanism. And since we don't have a mechanism, the experience doesn't exist. The twin knows better. The twin's body knows better. It has known since before it was two bodies, since the days when it was one. And the knowing is in the flesh, in the nerves, in the architecture of a system that was built as a single organism and never fully accepted the separation. The old texts documented it. The surveys confirm it. The instruments record it. The body knows it. The only thing that denies it is the model. And the model has never once asked a twin what it feels like.